Welcome to Budget Outlaws. My name is Andrew, and today we're going to introduce a new, exciting build series. I'm going to pull this V8 small block Chevy out of my Porsche 914 and replace it with a built Audi 4-cylinder. With a very big turbo. If you haven't checked out the V8 conversion video, I'll put that link in the description. So many of you are thinking already, Andrew, why do you want to remove the running awesome V8 conversion out of your 914 and put some other unknown untested engine in? Well, that's a many-faceted answer, but one of the most underlying truths is that I was getting bored of the V8 engine. I had the engine conversion at this point running for a little over 10 years, and in those 10 years, I probably had only 2,000 miles on the whole setup. I simply didn't drive the car in the configuration due to a number of problems. So either I needed to do something about it, or sell the car and buy something I could actually enjoy on the road. It's a good idea to identify those problems for any of you guys considering a V8 conversion in your 914 and curious what was so bad with a home-built setup. Well, first off, my radiator setup just did not cool the system properly. It would overheat on the freeway, on warm days, and in traffic. I found a leak in my radiator system once I ended up pulling it that could have attributed to the issue, but it must have developed after some time, as initially I didn't have this issue. Next, I was using a standard 914 transmission and CV joints. It seemed to handle the 290 wheel torque that I made on the dyno, but it didn't like to shift. This played into the next engine conversion, as I knew that whatever I did, I needed a better shifting transmission. Finally, the V8 engine just didn't make the power that I wanted, and I knew while I could have swapped heads and gained 100 horsepower, the rest of the drivetrain wouldn't have been able to hold the power. Also, I found that in town when I had crappy tires, all it would really do was spin the tires and go nowhere. This played into my decision on what to do with the engine choice as well. So I needed to do something different. But what? The obvious answer to any engine swap is a Chevy LS V8 conversion with a broad power band, high reliability, and aluminum block at a low price. This is a no-brainer. But this conversion had been done many times, and it was so similar to my current engine, I decided I wanted to do something just a little different. I do, however, stand by that an LS conversion backed with a strong transmission is an amazing 914 engine swap. I thought about a Audi V8 and V6 motors, an array of Subaru motors, and even a Honda swap, but none of these seemed to stay in my head long enough to be serious. Now, at the time I was retiring an old daily driver of mine, a 98 Audi A4 with the 1.8 liter turbo engine. This was a really great car for me, and I just loved it, so much so that I spent quite a bit of time and money modifying it. Now, one of the big things that I did to it was to upgrade the turbocharger system to a APR Stage 3 turbo kit, which made 255 wheel horsepower at 19 psi after some additional boost fiddling and exhaust work. This made the 3,100 pound car pretty fun and unsuspecting to most people on the road. 7 years of driving the car, I was commuting more and more, and the car was getting a bit tired. So a newer car was needed, and it was time to retire the old Audi from the track and autocross duties, as well as my daily use. However, right before I retired the Audi, I blew up the GT28 RS Turbo from the APR kit and replaced it with a much larger comp turbo with a triple ball bearing. The turbo was a CTB 5356, similar to a GT 3076. So with spending all this money on the Audi with these high-end parts, I knew I wasn't able to recoup it when selling the A4. So I pulled the APR kit, as well as the new turbo from the car, and sold the car with a stock engine configuration. This left me with some high-dollar parts and no home. Well, I'm sure you can see where this is going.
Yeah, LS.
What? No, I already told them in the beginning of the video, a turbo...
Or Turbo LS.
No, an Audi 4-cylinder turbo conversion. Get back to your LS6 914. People want to see that thing on the road. Or get back to the barn find 944. I want to see that thing fire up for the first time in 20 years. Anyways, I decided to put an Audi 1.8 turbo engine in my 914. Now, apart from having some big dollar parts already in my possession, there was still some other main reasons I went this direction. First off, I wanted something that was reliable and modern. This meant fuel injection. Next, I wanted to build up a motor. And when I mean build it up, I mean really build up a motor. And this engine is very well supported in the aftermarket, so that was a very good check. Now, the V8 motor had a decent bit of power, but I had traction issues at low speeds, and the car was a bit of a handful on mountain roads. So I knew that with a turbo, I could dial the power down or up depending on the situation. Here was the thought. I could go with about 200 wheel horsepower for canyon carving or autocrossing, or first gear work, and dial up the power for street use to about 300 wheel horsepower. Then for drag racing or trying to lay the smackdown on LS-powered 914s, I could throw race gas in it and crank the power up to about 400 wheel horsepower.
Alright, let's see if we can figure out something to beat that Audi. LSX 1000 horsepower. Twin turbos. And it does LS6, that's what I got.
Now, while adjustable power is great, it's also better if it's usable. One of the downsides of the 500 horsepower V8 motor is that it's pretty hairy in first and second gear with anything other than a long ratio gearbox. However, with a turbo and a nice boost controller, you can adjust boost by gear or speed and RPM and throttle input. This means that I can drop boost down to whatever the maximum boost is that traction will hold in first gear, and then the same thing in second and third, and reprogram it also for sticky tires or maybe a slippery or a stickier track. So, hopefully I got you as excited for this engine conversion as I am. I'm going to separate out the conversion in specific sections, so those that want to do a similar or similarly custom engine conversion can follow along at home and see what's involved. I'll also identify out all my costs. That way you guys can see what something like this takes to actually do. Now, I did all the fabrication, but I outsourced the machining work, which is typical for most people. Thanks for following along. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.